Ready to get back into our Father's Word here at the chapel. We invite you to get your Bible and join us if you'd care to today. We're going to pick it up in the law, the fourth book of Numbers, or I should say the fourth book of Moses, the book of Numbers. We're going to pick it up today in chapter 12, verse 3. And kind of a summary, our last lecture, we saw that God was providing these people as they came out of the bondage in Egypt, giving them manna, which spiritually speaking is His Word. On another spiritual level, the bread of life is Jesus Christ. And the people that came out of Egypt despised the manna, the bread that God was providing. And when He sent His Son, many of them despised His Son and rejected Him as well. They crucified Him on the cross. And as we picked up in chapter 12 in our last lecture, we had the situation where Miriam, the older sister of Moses, and Aaron, his older brother, were complaining that God didn't speak to them directly, that He only spoke to Moses directly. And what they were doing was exaggerating their own gifts and placing themselves on an equal footing to Moses. And that wasn't going to go over. Moses, being the patient and gentle man that he was pretty much going to take it from his older brother and sister. God is not going to allow it to pass. So with that, let's ask that word of wisdom in Yeshua Jesus' precious name. Father, we ask you to open eyes, open ears this day. Chapter 12, the book of Numbers, verse 3, and it reads, Now the man Moses was very meek. This means he was patient and humble above all the men which were upon the face of the earth. And that's saying quite a bit, but you know, the task that was put on the shoulders of Moses, he would have had to have been one patient rascal, I'll tell you, because the people of Israel, God said, I'll never give you more or tempt you above what you're able to handle. But boy, Moses must have been able to handle a bunch, because he was certainly tempted by this 2.1 million people that he was trying to lead into the promised land. Again, Moses would take this verbal injury from his older brother and sister. Will God take it? Verse 4. And the Lord spake suddenly, this means instantly, unto Moses and unto Aaron and unto Miriam, Come out ye three unto the tabernacle of the congregation. And they three came out. And the tabernacle of the congregation would be the place or the seat of judgment at this time. And again, Moses was willing to let it go. God isn't going to let it go, as is indicated by the fact he didn't wait around. He's going to nip this problem in the bud. Verse 5. And the Lord came down in the pillar of the cloud and stood in the door of the tabernacle and called Aaron and Miriam, and they both came forth. And I think Aaron is kind of following along here, much as he did when the people wanted a golden calf while Moses was up on Sinai. He probably thought, well, you know, yeah, I'm the head priest, and the people are asking for a golden calf, so it's my job to give them the best golden calf that I can give them. He was just following along, and here he's following along with Miriam as well. Verse 6, And he, this is the Lord, said, Hear now my words. If there be a prophet among you, and this said a little bit sarcastically by our Father. In other words, if you have a prophet among you, I, the Lord, will make myself known unto him in a vision, and will speak unto him in a dream, not face to face, as he promised he would speak to Moses. Verse, and remember, you know, Miriam in Exodus is called a prophetess. And certainly Aaron, being selected by God to be the high priest and having that pouch with the Urim and Thummim, was known to give God's judgment in response to things as well. So, but God's letting them know, you're complaining that I only speak to the face of Moses, and that's the way it is. Verse 7. My servant Moses is not so, whom is faithful or approved in all mine house. My stamp of approval is upon Moses. Verse 8. With him will I speak mouth to mouth, or as it states in Exodus chapter 33, verse 11, I will speak face to face with Moses as a friend. And God certainly considered Moses to be his friend, even apparently, and not in dark or in puzzles or tricks, speeches. And the similitude, or the image of the Lord, shall he behold. Wherefore then were ye not afraid to speak against my servant Moses? And Moses placed above all other prophets here by the way this is stated. And certainly God often communicated and communicates, I think, to this day, even with people through visions and dreams, possibly through parables, if you will. That's what this dark speech is. God to Moses, he didn't present what he wanted to Moses in parables or figures of speech for Moses to try and figure out. He spoke face to face and straight up with Moses. Moses was that special to our Heavenly Father. And God's saying to Miriam and Aaron, how could you be so bold as to speak against my servant, my friend, as the word is utilized in Exodus 33:11, my friend Moses, verse 9. And the anger of the Lord was kindled against them, and he departed, judgment made, and the punishment and the sentence already made by the Lord. Miriam and Aaron don't know what the punishment is at this point, but punishment is forthcoming. And the cloud departed from off the tabernacle, and behold, Miriam became leprous, white as snow. And Aaron looked upon Miriam, and behold, she was leprous. And Miriam learned that if you exalt yourself, God could abase you, and certainly she has been abased here. If you put yourself low, you humble yourself, as Christ would teach in Matthew chapter 23, verse 12, that you will be exalted. And Aaron and Miriam have been set straight. Verse 11, and Aaron said unto Moses, Alas, my Lord, or Sir, I beseech thee, lay not the sin upon us wherein we have done foolishly, and wherein we have sinned. And of course their sin was becoming puffed up in themselves. They got off on an ego trip about how important they were. They forgot to give God the credit for the gifts he had given them and glorifying him, but instead they turned to self-glorification, claiming their gifts to be their own, and even going so far as to say that they weren't being recognized enough for their gifts, trying to compare themselves with Moses. This lay not the sin upon us. It wasn't up to Moses to lay the sin upon them. God had already laid the sin upon them. This probably better translated would be, let us not bear the punishment of our sins. Verse 12, let her not be as one dead, of whom the flesh is half consumed when he cometh out of his mother's womb. And the word leprosy in the Hebrew language is zarath, and the prime of that in the Hebrew is a verb sarah, and it means to strike down. And one who had contacted leprosy was certainly seen as one who had been struck down by God. And what Aaron is saying, making a comparison here in verse 12 to a stillborn child. who, when he comes or she comes forth from the mother's womb, the body is already in the process of decomposing because the child is dead. And a leper was seen the same way, the human body decomposing as the person was already seen by others as being dead. Verse 13, Moses, the intercessor, comes to the rescue once again. And Moses cried unto the Lord, saying, Heal her now, O God, I beseech thee. Well, God is going to heal her, but it's not going to be now. There's going to be a matter of 7 days that she will suffer and endure the punishment for her haughty expression about her own gifts. Verse 14, And the Lord said unto Moses, If her father had but spit in her face, should she not be ashamed 7 days? Let her be shut out from the camp 7 days, and after that let her be received again. And the father spitting in a child's face was an insult, but certainly not an insult as having one being struck with leprosy. And this is really a fitting punishment for Miriam, if you think about it, because here she was placing herself on an equal level with Moses, which is far above the congregation, the nation of Israel, the normal people. But here, as a result, her punishment is she's not even going to be a member of that congregation for 7 days. She's going to be expelled from the camp. And, of course, there would be a matter of the law concerning the purification process for one who had leprosy and was cured was already given in Leviticus chapters 13 and 14, and that's a 7-day procedure, so probably immediately she began that process of purification. But 7 days she is cut off from the people as unclean. Verse 15, And Miriam was shut out from the camp 7 days, and the people journeyed not till Miriam was brought in again. Again, leprosy, I think, a very fitting punishment for her placing herself above the congregation of Israel, being cut off from the congregation. Verse 16 to conclude the chapter, And afterward the people removed from Hazeroth and pitched in the wilderness of Paran. That would be the third encampment site after they journeyed from Sinai. Now, in the next several chapters, we kind of jump around in time a little bit, and I'll be careful to try and help you keep up with the time frame as we work our way through. But what's going to happen now in chapter 13 is they come to the desert of Zin, Z-I-N, and this lies immediately to the south of Canaan. And what we're going to see is the people send spies, as they're called here, or people, one member of each of the 12 tribes, to check out the promised land, to see what it was and how strong are the armies of the people there, etc. So, and again, I'll help you keep up with the time frame, chapter 13, verse 1. And the Lord spake unto Moses, saying, verse 2, Send thou men, that they may search the land of Canaan, which I give unto the children of Israel. Of every tribe of their fathers shall ye send a man, every one a ruler among them. Now these 12 are not to be confused with the 12 tribe princes that were named in chapter 1. These are, however, men of rank. You could think of them as well respected of each of their tribes and captain. Now, if you have a companion Bible, make a note of Deuteronomy chapter 1, verse 22. And there's a scholarly note there by Bullinger that points out that it was not God who came up with this idea. It was the people of Israel, the nation, the congregation, that suggested that they send someone into the promised land to check it out. God had already told them in the book of Exodus, it's a land that flows with milk and honey. And he even told them about the giants that were there, but he said, I will go before you and defeat your enemies for you. And a little bit of doubt on the side of the people we see here. Well, God said it's a land that flows with milk and honey, but let's send 12 guys just to make sure that that's the way it is. Verse 3. And Moses, by the commandment of the Lord, sent them from the wilderness of Paran. All those men were heads of the children of Israel. And from the desert of Paran, the only thing lying between them and the promised land, the wilderness of Zin, Z-I-N. Now, God went along with them and gave them Moses permission to send these 12. But again, that note in Deuteronomy 1:22 indicates it was not God's idea, but God is kind of humoring him. I think it would have hurt our father's feelings a little bit that they doubted him, though. Verse 4. And these were their names of the tribe of Reuben, Shammua, the son of Zachar. This is an ill-fated group with the exception of two for sure. Shammua means renowned. Verse 5, of the tribe of Simeon, Shaphat, the son of Hori. Shaphat means judge. Verse 6, of the tribe of Judah, Caleb, the son of Jephunneh. And Caleb means forcible, and it will be Caleb will be the only one when these 12 come back from the promised land to check it out, who gives an honest account of what went on. Joshua of the tribe of the son of Nun will also join Caleb, and not only will they be the only two that survive out of the 12, Joshua and Caleb will be the only two who are allowed to live long enough to enter the promised land of all the adults of Israel at this time. Verse 7, of the tribe of Issachar, Igal, the son of Joseph. Igal means avenger if you translate it rather than transliterate it. Verse 8, of the tribe of Ephraim, Oshea, the son of Nun. Now, Oshea is a form of the name Joshua, and that is who indeed we're talking about here, as we'll see when we get to verse 16. Joshua, if you say it in the Hebrew, Yeshua, and it means Yahweh's Savior, as the name Jesus Christ comes from the same. Verse 9, of the tribe of Benjamin, Palti, the son of Raphu. Palti means delivered. Verse 10, of the tribe of Zebulun, Gadiel, the son of Sodai. Gadiel meaning fortune of God. Verse 11, of the tribe of Joseph, namely of the tribe of Manasseh, Gadai, the son of Susai. Gadai meaning fortunate. Verse 12, of the tribe of Dan, Amiel, the son of Gamaliel. Amiel, you might recommend Ami is people, and Amiel, of course, people of God. Verse 13, of the tribe of Asher, Sether, the son of Michael. Sether, if you translate it, means hidden. Verse 14, of the tribe of Naphtali, Nabi, or Nabai, the son of Vophsi, and Nabai meaning occult. And the last of the tribes, not the least, verse 15, of the tribe of Gad, Guiel, the son of Machai, and Guiel meaning majesty of God. So here we have 12 that the people of Israel have picked out, or Moses picked them out as well-trusted, well-thought-of representatives of each tribe to go into the promised land to check it out. These are the names of the men which Moses sent to spy out the land. the promised land. And Moses called Oshea, the son of Nun, Joshua, and of course, again in the Hebrew, Yeshua. And Joshua was, as we learned in an earlier chapter, a young man who was a servant to the Lord, to Moses, and the Lord I'll include as well, because Joshua, whose heart and his spirit would be likened to that of Caleb, which being close to that of the Lord himself, would be the one who would eventually take Moses' place as leader of the nation, and as a type of Jesus Christ himself would deliver the nation of Israel into the promised land. Verse 17, and Moses sent them to spy out the land of Canaan, and said unto them, Get ye up this way southward, and go up unto the mountain. And this loses it a little bit in the translation. What he instructed them was to go south first, approximately 9 miles, so that they could take better a route to get there, and then turn eastward into the land of Canaan. And they would go into the mountainous area, which today is considered in Palestine. Verse 18, and see the land, what it is. What's the character of the land? Is it flat? Is it mountainous? Is the going rugged? And the people that dwelleth therein, whether they be strong or weak, few or many. In other words, size up the enemy. And that's a good thing to do as far as military strategy goes. As Christ would say in Luke chapter 14, verse 31, what king goes to war without first knowing whether he has sufficient men to win the war? And if you don't have sufficient men to fight and win the war, you better send ambassadors to negotiate a peace agreement. Verse 19, and what the land is that they dwell in, whether it be good or bad, and what cities they be that they dwell in, whether in tents or in strongholds. Are they nomadic peoples who dwell in tents and move from place to place with their herds and their flocks, or do they live in walled, protected cities? Also good to know. But again, God promised them it's a land that flows with milk and honey, and yes, there are giants there, but I'll go before you and defeat your enemies for you. A little distrust on the part of the people of Israel. 20. And what the land is, whether it be fat or lean. Is it a fertile land that will, sustain crops? Whether there be wood therein or not. We're going to need trees for building not only homes, but other structures, barns, sheep cots, etc. Are there trees there that we can use to build with? And be ye of good courage. They won't, except for 2. And bring of the fruit of the land. Now the time was the time of the first ripe grapes. Now this would be probably late July or early August, depending on what the weather had been during the spring and summer. 21. So they went up and searched the land from the wilderness of Zin unto Rahab, as men come to Hamath. And this is saying they basically looked the land over from the southern border all the way to the northern border, checking out to see what the land held, Hamath being the northern boundary of the land of Canaan. 22, and they ascended by the south, and came unto Hebron, where Ahiman, better said, Shishai, and Talmai, the children of Anak, were. Now Hebron was built 7 years before Zoan in Egypt. This Zoan one of the residents of one of the pharaohs, a well-known area. Now, these three that are named here by name, the children of Anak. Anak, for those of you who don't know, was of the descendants of the Nephilim, the giants, in other words. This Hebron later would be given to Caleb because he would be, with the help of the armies of Judah, would be the one who would expel the giants from Hebron. And in Caleb's eyes, as we'll see at the end of this lecture, with God on your side, there are no giants. So that's what's going on here. By the way, Hebron was in existence even at the time of Abraham, as is written in the book of Genesis 23. And they came unto the brook of Eshcol, and cut down from thence a branch with one cluster of grapes. And they bare it between two upon a staff. And they brought of the pomegranates and of the figs. It was a very fertile land, a land indeed that flowed with milk and honey, just as God promised. This brook also in the Hebrew language can be valley, Eshcol. If a brook is present and has water running through it, eventually with erosion it will cause a valley eventually. So that's I think the reason that the two words mean the same thing. But imagine that, one cluster of grapes so large and heavy that two men, they ran a stake or a pole through it, and then it took two men to bear it on their shoulders. So indeed a land that flowed with milk and honey. 24. The place was called the brook or valley of Eshcol. Eshcol means cluster of grapes, because of the cluster of grapes which the children of Israel cut down from thence. Verse 25. And they returned from searching of the land after 40 days. 40 in biblical numerics is probation. Will these 12 representatives of the tribes of Israel pass probation? Well, let's find out. 26. And they went and came to Moses and to Aaron and to all the congregation of the children of Israel unto the wilderness of Paran to Kadesh, and brought back word unto them and unto all the congregation, and showed them the fruit of the land, and the fruit of the land was good. And we're kind of jumping around in time here, and in our last lecture we talked about we were just 3 days from the time that they left Sinai. Now we've jumped forward in time quite a bit, because Kadesh, also known as Kadesh Barnea in Deuteronomy chapter 1 verse 19, which means sanctuary, by the way, is a place in the desert approximately 170 miles from Sinai. So impossible for this large group of people to move that distance in that period of time. And in fact, when we get to the 33rd chapter of Numbers, we'll have the various places of encampment listed for us, and Kadesh is certainly not the fourth stop or place of encampment. So I wanted to explain that as we work our way through. Verse 27, and they, this is the 12 spies, told him, Moses, and said, we came unto the land whither thou sentest us, and surely it floweth with milk and honey, and this is the fruit of it. Sure enough, just like God said in Exodus chapter 3, verse 8. 28, nevertheless, but, and this is a big but, the people be strong that dwell in the land, and the cities are walled or fortified, and very great. This very great means not only big in size, but also in wickedness, if you will, superhuman, if you will. And moreover, we saw the children of Anak there. And here we see the result of the second influx of the Nephilim. The purpose of the flood of Noah, and it was successful, was to wipe out the seed line of the Nephilim, the giants. But there was a second influx even as early as Genesis chapter 12, as it's written there. And these giants in the land are a result of that. But God not only told them in Exodus chapter 3, verse 8, that it was a land that flowed with milk and honey, he told them also about the giants in the land and that he would take care of them. 29. The Amalekites, Amalek, the grandson of Esau, dwell in the land of the south, and the Hittites, and the Jebusites, those who built Jebus, which David would conquer and later rename Jerusalem. And the Amorites dwell in the mountains, and the Canaanites dwell by the sea, the Mediterranean Sea, that is to say, and by the coast of Jordan. Now, most of these, all of these names that you see here are known also as Canaanites. That's with a C. Don't confuse Kenites with a K with the Canaanites. But these people inhabited the land of Canaan, and there were some bad hombres, and they're expressing fear of them. 30. And Caleb stilled, this word in the Hebrew, hassa, means he hushed the people before Moses, and said, let us go up at once and possess it, for we are well able to overcome it. Let's go. God said that land is ours. I believe God. Let's have faith in him and go possess the land that he has promised to our fathers. Verse 31, but the men that went up with him said, these are the other of the spies, we be not able to go up against the people, for they are stronger than we. Unbelief on their part. Caleb believed God. God's promise that this land was theirs. These others did not. And notice Joshua doesn't jump in on Caleb's side at this point either. It's a little bit later that he comes to the aid of Caleb. Right now, Caleb is out there on the limb by himself. 32. And they brought up an evil, this is a slanderous report of the land which they had searched unto the children of Israel, saying, the land through which we have gone to search it is a land that eateth up the inhabitants. It's such a wonderful land that the people strive against each other for possession of the land thereof. And all the people that we saw in it were men of great stature. What would have happened if little David, when he went up against Goliath, had had this attitude that there's no way that we can go up against these giants. Little David wasn't afraid of them. Caleb wasn't afraid of them either. Verse 33, and we'll stop for today. And there we saw the giants. This is Nephil in the Hebrew language. And if you have a Moffat Bible, check it out. Moffat quite accurately has the word Nephilim here. The sons of Anak, which come of the giants. And we were in our own sight as grasshoppers, and so we were in their sight. Now, we're about 857 years at this point from the time of the flood of Noah. But these giants are the result, as I said, of the second influx. But here we got 11 of the 12 representatives of the tribes that went into the promised land, and little Caleb all by himself saying, let's go, God promised us that land. And the other 11 are saying, no, there's no way that we can go up against the giants. Well, God's going to be pretty disappointed in the lack of trust in him on the part of his people. And as I mentioned earlier, Joshua will eventually come around and join Caleb. But the other 10, they're not going to be around much longer, because God doesn't like those who make up slanderous reports and get in the way of his plan. His plan, Israel enters the promised land. these other 10 are saying, or 11, including Joshua at this point, are saying we can't do it. So there's a time coming when you can enter the promised land as well. Are you going to be like the 10 who said, no, we can't do it? Or are you going to be like Caleb and eventually Joshua will join him? I hope it's the latter.